Hi, this is Miss Linton, and this is my wonderful Period 3 APBio class. Say hi. Hi. All right. So we are discussing Chapter 40, Hormones and Endocrine System. Is this one of the systems we have to know? Yes. Yes. What's another one? Nervous. What's another one? Immune. Perfect. What do nervous and endocrine system have in common? They're like masters. Okay, I'm looking for something else. Help maintain what? Homeostasis. Good. Which one works quicker? Nervous. Nervous works quicker. Now, is there some endocrine system going on in this one? Yes. Yes. Can you name from just your introduction, your ed puzzle, what could be a possible hormone that's getting secreted here? Yes. Adrenaline and noradrenaline, right? Adrenaline is fight or flight, clearly working on the flight. He's just petting him, saying, "Hi, friend, wait for me." Okay, just patting him here. And he's running. So these are the different glands of the endocrine system, which you will know and love. And oldest bio buddy here, explain this. Go ahead. Okay, so how do they do that? Hormones defined. Ori? Hormones defined are chemicals that affect the behavior. Chemicals that affect the behavior of other glands or tissues. Chemicals that affect the behavior of other glands or tissues. And hormones influence the metabolism of cells. The metabolism of cells. Growth and development of body parts. Growth and development of body parts. And this. Homeostasis. Good. Who just went? Old, young? Is it old's turn? Oh, young. This is all you. You totally got this. Go ahead, young one.
Sorry, Alice. Sorry.
All right. So endocrine glands are called ductless because there is no duct. It's going to go into the tissue fluid, which is going to get picked up by what kind of pressure to go into the capillaries? Osmotic pressure, which draws it back into the capillaries and then throughout the body. Now, nervous and endocrine system both work to control homeostasis, and you already told me nervous works, more rapidly. I want you to take a look right here. Here's this tissue or cell. Eyes are up. It's secreting some sort of hormone. That hormone ultimately gets carried in the blood, and it affects this target cell. Does that hormone only go to the target cell? No, it goes to all cells. But how does it only affect particular target cells? Receptors. Exactly. They're the only ones who have a receptor for that hormone. Now, neurons also, yes?
So those cells that don't have those receptors,
Mm-hmm.
where does the hormone go?
Right on by. Blows right on by. It's just like for me, if I'm calling, right? Only your phone has the receptor for your number, right? So it's sending this out as a radio wave, right? To everybody, right? Is it a radio wave?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sending it out to everybody. In fact, it's bouncing off some tower and coming back. But only one of you has the receptor for that number. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, neurons still work by chemicals as well. We call them what? Neurotransmitters. And they get secreted at the, what's this general area? Synapse. Except these are really, really close together, right? At that synapse, where this could be in your brain, and this could be down in your liver, right? Now, there's something called neurosecretory cells. Sounds like two things. Sounds like a neuron. Sounds like it secretes. And it does. It is part of your nervous tissue, but it secretes a hormone, particularly a releasing hormone, and we're going to see this in the connection between the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland. Let's think hypothalamus. Hypo means below. It sits below the thalamus. Remember, the thalamus kind of looks like an egg in the middle of the brain, right? And we connected like smelling with emotions and memories right there. So hypothalamus sits below that, and the pituitary gland sits below that. Okay, and we'll talk about both parts of this pituitary gland. So neurosecretory cells, I just want to introduce that to you. Now, I'd like you to ping pong back and forth Slate, you are nervous system. Blue, you are endocrine system. And yes, I found the paddles to match the appropriate colors. Talk about, for each topic, just ping pong back and forth. How do you control? Yeah, I spent time because not all blue ones were actually good paddles. So I had to find the blue paddle that I like. It's pathetic. Seriously, it's a problem. Okay, ping pong back and forth and talk about how you control the body. Go ahead.
Slow and long lasting, also negative feedback.
Okay, my friends whom I know and love, do you not see an essay question right here? Compare and contrast how the nervous system and the endocrine system work. Give an example of feedback for each or something along those lines. Okay, so you want to start anticipating those. On your notes, go back to hormones and homeostasis. Compared to the nervous system, it acts more slowly, but the effect is longer lasting. Acts more slowly, but the effect is longer lasting. Now you see negative feedback up here because it's most common. And remember, it's old one's turn, yeah? It's negative is not implying like a good or a bad thing. Old one, remind them of this. They already know it, but just remind them. Go ahead.
So it's not good and bad, both physically and body homeostasis. Positive is exaggeration. If you're cold, you can keep getting hotter. But negative is
Young one, use this to explain. Go ahead, young. You're old. Is this old? Is this young? Okay. Old one. Let's give an actual example. Old one, you take off for this. Start right here at the arrow. Body temperature rises above. Go ahead, old one.
Isn't that positive?
Which is negative. Yeah, no, it's not positive. Because like positive, you'll be
Guys, what is this an example of? Positive feedback or negative feedback? Negative feedback. Why? It's keeping it at a set point. Okay, question?
Didn't you say that like when you have a fever it keeps
That's
going
different.
up?
That's when you have a fever, when you have an illness, so you're responding to something else. Yeah, that's different. Okay. And now young, this is yours.
Oh, dude, this is so easy. Yeah, okay. Like, when the baby's getting born, like, they get, like, attracted to it. This shows that it's a positive feedback.
Yeah.
Brain stimulates pituitary gland, secreting more oxytocin or whatever, okay, which then push off, like, creates even more contractions that are even, like, harder, so that,
Okay. Now, if I said amp it up, let's go, what is that an example of?
positive.
If I say simmer down now, negative, almost there. What? Negative. Okay, negative, because think about it, almost there means I'm going to stop, you know, when I get to that point. Now, you could almost say, almost there, you could make an argument, right? And almost there, this baby's almost born. Yeah. Right? Okay, so I see both sides to your coin. I gotcha. So keep in mind, positive feedback is going to keep going, and trigger some other reaction, or in this case, the baby coming out. Set point. Both positive and negative feedback can be control tools. So too, mechanisms can contrary or antagonistic hormones. Old one, you take this one on. Go ahead.
Let me tell you about blood takes this, and depending on if it's high insulin produced, so it can take away the high glucose. Glucagon is released to add more, and then it just releases it back in.
What kind of feedback?
All right. So let's get some notes down on here. Feedback loops we already learned in an earlier chapter, so I threw those in there. There's nothing that you have to add to that. But if you go down to antagonistic, another word is contrary. Contrary hormones that have opposite effects. This is a classic example. You're going to want to have classic examples for each of these. Okay? This is the classic contrary hormones. Another one will be thyroid hormone from the thyroid gland. You already, that has to do with metabolism, but the thyroid gland also secretes something called calcitonin. And I remember calcitone it down now because it lowers blood calcium levels, where the parathyroid gland, there's 4 little glands sitting on top of the thyroid gland, parathyroid hormone elevates blood calcium levels. So between the two of them, it keeps calcium levels just right. And then you go calcium, why would that be important? Yeah, think about the synapses. Okay, it's also used in the sarcomeres in muscle fibers, as calcium is important in the sarcoplasmic reticulum, and that helps your muscles to contract and neurons. So calcium levels are super important. So that's why those contrary ones can really dial it in. Just like blood sugar levels, you can really dial it in. You're not going to overshoot so much because you have one that just corrects it. All right? So could things ever go wrong? Absolutely. If you hypersecrete, it's too much. Hypo is too little. We can think of hypertonic, hypotonic, right? Hypertonic had more osmotically active substances. Hypotonic had less osmotically active substances. So if you're hypersecreting, you have more of something. Hyposecrete, you have less. And we'll look at some examples of some different diseases where you're hyper and hyposecreting. Okay, now you already understand this, that hormones are chemical signals, and they will be put in the bloodstream because that's what they do. And when they're carried in the bloodstream, they will impact all cells. They'll be around that. Sorry, better word is, but they only have target cells are the only ones that have receptors. Now, these pictures right here are showing you receptors on the cell membrane. And most of your hormones are water-soluble hormones. So are they hydrophilic or hydrophobic? Hydrophilic if they're water-soluble. And most of your hormones are protein hormones. And if you remember the structure of a protein is built out of amino acids. Remember how you have the amino group that's usually positive and the carboxyl group, C double bond O, O minus, right? Negative. So those are going to be water-soluble, right? Hydrophilic because they have charges on them, right? Most of your hormones are water-soluble, and they never enter a cell. They stand at the door and knock. They never go in. They either trigger a secondary messenger inside the cell through signal transduction, or they open up a gate and allow something like calcium to be the secondary messenger. And that's what they're showing you right here. The receptor is on the surface of the membrane. But lipid-soluble hormones, steroid hormones, those hormones, because lipids can dissolve into lipids, they can move right through the cell membrane, and their receptor is an intracellular receptor within the cell. And they will bind and then do their job. And we'll compare and contrast those in just a minute. I just want to point out to you, currently in this diagram, the receptor is on the surface as opposed to being inside the cell. Okay? Youngest bio buddy, Ayao, in your own words, talk about what's going on right here. Go ahead.
They go inside.
All right, so you have hormones or chemical signals. Name me another chemical signal besides hormones. God, you should be spitting these out. Cytokines, interferon, interleukin, right? Neurotransmitters, right? Those are all chemical signals. Okay? Now, but hormones are chemical signals. They can only impact those target cells that have protein receptors for that hormone. That receptor might be on the cell surface, it might be interior, but you have to have a receptor. Now, here's another chemical signal. Okay, chemical signals can be pheromones, but pheromones, that signal is between two different organisms. A pheromone is between two different organisms. It could be the same species. Obviously, pheromones are intended as a form of chemical communication, right? But they're usually within the same species, as opposed to a hormone is two different body parts within your body is a hormone. But between two different people, that is called a pheromone. Normally, pheromones have to do with sex of some sort. The female usually is secreting them, and then she will send a signal then, and then males come a-running. However, males can mark females when they have sex with, let's say, a moth. A male moth has sex with a female moth before she even has any kind of fluid in her wings, when she's still like trying to get her wings to grow. And she's coming out of the cocoon like, I'm not ready yet. He's like, no, you are. And he will go and have sex with that butterfly, and he knows she's a virgin because she smells like a virgin. And he'll mark her. He marks her, so other males, when they fly by, they're like, oh, she's already had sex. I'm out of here. Because they don't want to waste, right, their gametes. And sometimes gametes are expensive, or the process of sex is really expensive. And for instance, male elephants, they will taste the urine of the female elephants to know whether she's ovulating or not. Because females will have sex with male elephants even though she hasn't started ovulating yet. She's just giving them a run for their money, trying them out, you know, maybe save that sperm, maybe not. But a large male, he wants to use his sperm, you know, on only those that are actually going to do something with it. So they taste the urine. It's like their own little ovu test kit to know whether they should bother reproducing with her or not. So pheromones can be used that way. We've talked about MHC. Remember MHC1s and MHC2s? And we talked about the T-shirt test, remember? And that females would be attracted to males. Like sometimes that you go in for the kiss and you're like, no, you know, I can kiss them mechanically. I know how it works, but I'm not really interested. The smell isn't there. And the smell may be all due to those MHC receptors, and you are attracted to somebody who has different MHC receptors than yourself in order to increase the variety of your what? Offspring, okay? The variety of what your offspring can get, okay? And that you're repelled by somebody who smells differently. Also things like women in their periods. Women can draw other women onto their cycle. If you're the alpha female, you have superpowers, you're like ethylene. Right? Remember the ripening hormone? It's a gaseous hormone. You were like ethylene. And in families and homes, and you know this, if you have a few sisters in your house and a mom, if they are all on their cycle together, woe to the man, okay? Because there's, you know, and everything, you should know there's key things you should say and not say when a woman's on her period. You know, especially just don't say anything. Yeah, exactly. There you go. Just don't talk.
Yeah.
Do you have sisters?
Yeah, one.
Yeah, so you know. It's just like better. It doesn't really matter what you say. Whatever you say is wrong. And so it's just best to keep quiet. But it is, you have to understand in females, there are hormones that are moving around, sometimes at a rate that's really hard for people to maintain homeostasis. And girls, this does not give you the green light to be psychotic when you're on your period. But there are literally people who actually almost become psychotic with their hormone change. And I'm sure there's things they can take to help deal with that. And it's just like they are not themselves, or something else that wouldn't bother you at all of a sudden you're like, I can't believe it. Okay, and everything, there's tears, you know, and it's just like this. And again, just stay away. Dorms, when there's whole floors of women and they're all on their period together, it's not a happy place, you know. But there's some reason why, and maybe I'm thinking it's probably developed out of competition, right? Because if you're ovulating before me, you might get that man to inseminate you, that I want that sperm. Do you see? So if they are all in the same cycle at the same time, then there's an equal playing field. I'm just saying, I don't know why, but maybe that is, you know, that's why that trait has persisted. And here's a favorite one of mine, okay? Yeah, women's tears. If a man smells women's tears in a jar versus saline solution, smelling women's tears makes your testosterone levels go down. Word of wisdom, don't make us cry, okay? Because your manlyhood is just going to shrivel up and die, okay? So it is a way, maybe that's why it's adapted, is don't upset the female. Because if you upset the female, you don't deserve to make any sperm. Stop. And so your testes will just, you know, go away. I don't know what to tell you. Be nice to us. Be nice to us. All right.
Yeah, is this recorded?
And that doesn't mean men. If like you make your girlfriend or whatever cry, don't go running away. I can feel my testes getting smaller already. Yeah. All right. So I'm so glad we're recording this. Now, use those tears, girls, as a weapon. All right. So
Have a jar.
jar of your tears. Put some flowers in it. You're so sweet to me. All right, now, take them, wipe them on them. You make me so mad. All right, hormones work differently to affect change. So I've already introduced this a little bit already. So let's see how you can, if you can run with this. And Blue, why don't you take the one on the left, water soluble, and Slate, you take the one on the right. Go ahead.
So you see, there's a lipid soluble form of
Yeah, so water, I told you, water's on the outside. It waits on the outside, then it separates for transit. It never goes on the inside.
Okay, so water-soluble hormones mean, by default, that they're not lipid-soluble. Cell membranes are made out of lipids. So they will bind to a receptor at the surface, okay? They just stand at the door and knock. They don't get to go in. If they can start a signal transduction pathway. More often than not, it's something that's going to go on in the cytoplasm, usually making something like glucose available to that cell. Now let's think about this. If I make glucose available to that cell could do more what? Cellular respiration. You do more cellular respiration, what do you have? More ATP for whatever that cell's job is. They have the energy to do, generate, make whatever they need. Okay? So that's like a switch that you can turn on. You don't actually go in, okay? You just bind to receptor and trigger this signal transduction pathway. Or, just like we saw before when we looked at ligand-gated channels in neurons. Are you thinking ligand-gated channels? Are you thinking about the synapse? You thinking how the neurotransmitter, when it's received on the postsynaptic membrane, how the gate opens and it could allow sodium in to cause depolarization? Are you thinking about that? Similar, it could open up a gate. It could open up a gate and it could allow something like calcium in, which could then trigger a reaction within that cell. So calcium could be outside and ends up coming inside as a result of that hormone binding. The hormone would be the first messenger. The calcium would be the second messenger. And somewhere in here, this would be referred to as the second messenger. I'll give you an example of that. Yes?
And how would the calcium affect the cell contrasting to the hormone, like different from the hormone?
Well, it's that the hormone can't come in. It does have a receptor which triggers a gate. This gate could be a gate that can open and allow calcium, even though calcium is water soluble, right? It could still allow calcium going in, which could trigger another reaction inside, just like you could trigger one of these reactions that's going on. Some sort of pathway that triggers the behavior of that particular cell, whatever it is. Okay? As opposed to a lipid soluble. Lipid soluble means I don't have to wait outside. I can move in, I can move right through the phospholipid bilayer, and I have a receptor within, an intracellular receptor inside. You bind to it, and then here's the beauty of it. It can go in and act as a transcription factor. Okay? Transcription factors help our RNA polymerase bind to the promoter, which can then facilitate transcription, which leads to translation, which leads to a protein. Yay! Okay, so steroid hormones usually work more slowly than protein hormones. Because a protein hormone, you're just starting a cascade of reactions, which makes usually glucose available in this cell. In this one, a lipid soluble, you have to go through the process of transcription and translation to make an active protein. So if you think about steroid hormones, long-lasting effects, right? These are coming from either what? Ovaries or testes. What comes from the testes that I'm talking about? Testosterone. What comes from the ovaries? Estrogen and progesterone. So those are two areas where steroid hormones are released. Then you think about the adrenal gland. The adrenal gland sits on top of the kidney. Now, it has the adrenal cortex and the adrenal medulla. The adrenal medulla makes adrenaline and noradrenaline. Those are fast acting. That's fight or flight, right? Okay? And the adrenal medulla, those are protein hormones. And in fact, do you remember how in the autonomic nervous system, how I told you there are 2 motor neurons? There is not a second motor neuron to the adrenal medulla. There is only one. They think possibly the adrenal medulla is the second motor neuron. And remember how we talked about parasympathetic and sympathetic? The neurotransmitter of the sympathetic nervous system is adrenaline. Are you putting it together? The neurotransmitter of the sympathetic nervous system is adrenaline. Adrenaline is what gets released from the adrenal medulla, who has no second motor neuron. It's the same thing, whether it comes from a neuron or the adrenal medulla, fight or flight. You see that? Works very rapidly. Why? Because I need to start fighting or flighting right now. Okay? So that's rapid, 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 rapid. Same messenger to all the cells, whether it comes from the nervous system or the endocrine system. Okay? That's the adrenal medulla. Anyway, the adrenal cortex on the outside, the adrenal cortex, remember, has 3 categories of hormones. I think I've spoken of this before. You know about mineral corticoids. What do you hear in mineral corticoids? Mineral, you know a famous one, aldosterone. Remember aldosterone? Think about mineral, more minerals in my blood, aldosterone, more sodium, more water, right? You know the whole connection to blood pressure, blood volume, right? Okay, so that comes from the adrenal cortex, mineral corticoids, aldosterone. Glucocorticoids, what do you hear in glucocorticoids? Glucose, right? So that increases glucose levels. So the pancreas is not the only guy in charge of glucose levels, right? Okay, so glucocorticoids, you've heard of one, cortisone, or that's a steroid shot, right? That fights inflammation, right? Okay, and cortisol is the wake-up hormone. Like in the morning, it's a contrast between less melatonin, which is secreted by your pineal gland here in the brain, like it's called your third eye, and your melatonin levels rise when you sleep, and then as morning comes, they fall off. And that's why if you have to get up and pee in the middle of the night, it's best if you can manage without peeing all over the floor or tripping and falling, not to turn on a light. Because when you turn on a light to get up and pee in the middle of the night, all of a sudden your melatonin levels go and crash. And then when you go back to sleep, you don't sleep as solidly because your melatonin levels are so much lower. And that's why people take melatonin when they cross the country and their time changes. Does that make sense? Okay, that's the sleeping one. And think about this. Just because we're here, I can't stand it. I have to teach it to you right now because I know you can understand it. sleeping is actually tied to sex because think about this. It's all about reproduction, right? Survival of the fittest. That's your goal. Get your genes passed on. So the amount of melatonin you secrete is going to be different in the winter and the summer. Why? Longer nights in the winter, right? Shorter nights in the summer, less melatonin. And this helps you to make sure that you reproduce so you're at the right time, so your babies are born in the spring, right? Not in the middle of dead of winter, right? So it's all based on melatonin, which makes me think about PFR and flowering, right? See the connections? Okay, so anyway, pineal gland, okay, etc. So we talked about the adrenal cortex. You have glucocorticoids, you have mineral corticoids, and you ready for this? Cortical sex hormones also come from there, okay? Similar to other steroid hormones like estrogen and progesterone as well. So those are your only steroid hormones. Most of your hormones are protein-based hormones. Okay? This is an example here. This is your typical example of second messenger, classic second messenger example, okay? This is the one to know. And I'll show you another picture too that kind of puts it all together and you can decide which one you like. So here's epinephrine, that's another name for adrenaline, okay? It binds to a receptor. Adrenaline's from the adrenal medulla, so it's a protein hormone, water soluble. It binds. It triggers this, you remember we talked about signal transduction, okay? It triggers a G protein. I think G GO, okay? That GO protein, okay? So when it triggers G protein, this will trigger adenylate cyclase. Adenylate cyclase is a protein that is enzymatic. Remember how we talked about channels and carriers and receptors? Remember? Cell recognition, enzymatic. Remember that part? Okay? And this makes, this makes something called cyclic AMP. Now I think there's you've heard of that before, right? There's ATP, ADP, right? Cyclic AMP, where the phosphate is reconnected back on. Okay, look what does it. Adenylate cyclase makes it. Cyclic AMP is the second messenger. Here's the deal. This system right here, pretty universal in cells. The only thing that's different is the receptor to flip the switch. Absorbing, absorbing. Okay, so what I would like to have happen is take a look at this picture and apply what I just talked to you about, whoever's turn it is. I don't know whose turn it is. Go ahead.
The single molecule in the receptor go for then it goes to the enzymatic protein.
For 5 days in a row.
Okay, now, go ahead, sir. That's another form of a different arrangement of still you're dealing with ATP. It's a signal molecule still. Okay, now, this is one way to, they kind of build on each other. If you see what I had here, I had it stop at cyclic AMP, right? Remember we saw cyclic AMP and CAP? Remember that? Activating CAP, which was a transcription factor, right? Okay. Now, if you take a look, remember we had that when glucose levels were low? So now you'll see the connection. Now we're taking it a step further. Here you can see cyclic AMP, protein kinase A. That's activating. Remember we talked about kinases and activating enzymes, yes? Let's take it one more level. Same thing before. Here's adrenaline, activated G protein, activated adenylate cyclase, ATP becoming cyclic AMP. Here you can see kinase A becomes active. Phosphorylase kinase becomes active. Glycogen, phosphorylase, but eventually glycogen becomes what? Glucose. So not only can it act as a transcription factor, which we saw earlier, which activated, right, the burning of lactose, right, instead of glucose, remember that? But this also generates, if you have glycogen stores, turning it into glucose. All interconnected. all interconnected. Okay? Now, I explained that entire process. Look where it says examples. So you can see little letter I about epinephrine binding leads to activation of G protein. And then I told you cyclic AMP, second messenger, enzyme cascade, ultimately leads to glycogen breaking down into glucose and becoming available to the tissues. Now, that is how a protein hormone works. A steroid hormone, remember, works different. Here, and this is a picture, I believe, from your book. I might have joined them together. I don't know what I did here. But out of the capillary, here comes that hormone triggering cyclic AMP, glycogen ultimately becoming glucose. But here is a steroid hormone. It can cross the phospholipid. It can bind to a receptor. It can act as a transcription factor, making mRNA. Here's some ribosomes translating into a protein. So steroid hormones and gene. Did I give you the top one? No. Oh, okay. It's peptide hormones, water soluble, and second messengers. And then steroid hormones, lipid soluble, and gene expression. And then little letter A, hormone diffuses through the plasma membrane, binds to an intracellular receptor and into the nucleus. Hormone receptor complex acts as a transcription factor and activates a gene, and ultimately a protein is formed. Activates a gene, and ultimately a protein is formed. And then I gave an example. All right. We have one question here on this one. Become something of that you like to do in the summer. Something you like to do in the summer. Yeah, sleep 1, sleep 2, sleep 3. Somebody wrote AP English homework. Oh, look, some people like to do cross country. TV, nothing. Sweat. Tennis. Okay. Well, you can still get in. Well, the Bible, you read the Bible in the summer because you want to, or as part of your English work? Okay. I was thinking, oh, what righteous children I have. I like to spend my summer studying the Bible. Good children. I work with orphans and missionaries every day. I get up and memorize scripture. Oh, no, it's for English. Okay. Michael and Vinay, get ready, because I'm going to call on you in just a minute. Not for this question. I just want you to be prepared. Oh, so sad, but at least 21 of you got it together. All right. So 21 of you said peptide hormones are received by a receptor located in the plasma membrane, and you are right. But 3 of you struggled. 2 of you couldn't answer. You said both B and C are correct. B are received by a receptor located in the cytoplasm. That is a lipid hormone, and it works by bringing about the transcription of DNA. B and C are the opposite of right answer for you to choose, if you chose that. B and C are the example of a steroid hormone. Check your BioBuddy screen. Either counsel them or congratulate them. Counsel or congratulations. Okay, Michael, Vinay, approach the board, please. All right. These are going to be, because Michael likes to answer quickly, he's going to be the first to go. Now wait, Michael, switch sides, because you're on that side. This is going to be slate against blue. You are going to get a question. When Michael is finishing answering this question, he is going to choose another slated person to come up. I don't care which slate he picks, you're going to pick another blue. So you have to start by picking what creature you want. You can't pick the same creature. cow. He's a cow. Okay.
That's so lit.
Okay, they're gonna get a question. You can encourage them on what answer. I'm gonna pause you. Okay,
Let's go, Slade. Let's go, Ariel. Let's go. Let's go, team.
so let's check your answers. Now I want all the odd answers to be answered by Slate of your partnership, and Blue, you answer the even ones. So Slate, this is yours to answer to your bio buddy. Tell your bio buddy. By the way, Dragon got it right and Cowboy did not.
Endocrine system. You should take it down.
Yeah, but
You write it down?
Did you get that? All right, Blue, this is yours. Blue, this is yours.
Okay, I'll help you.
Okay, Blue. There you go, Blue. They both got it right.
That's the you don't even need to write it down.
Did you get it? Okay, Slate, this is yours. You both got it right. Did you get it?
can move right through cell.
Okay, Blue. Both got it right. D, okay, Slate.
Okay, we know this.
They both got it right. Yeah? And Blue, this one's yours. Got it? Okay, good. All right, and I think we are going to be done in just one more second. Okay, so we will pick up at, where will we pick up at? 45 next time. All right, pack it up. Make sure the computers are plugged in, please. You're super
Dude,
smart.
okay, right? We have a game in downtown.